Please subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts, Immigrantly Uninterrupted. You can subscribe for as low as $34.99 for the entire year or $3.99 a month. And yes, you'll get ad-free episodes. But this isn't really about skipping ads. Independent media is getting squeezed. Sponsorships have slowed, especially for small, mission-driven orgs like ours. Instead of chasing brands or reshaping our voice to fit someone else's agenda, we're choosing something different. We're choosing you. If Sportly has ever made you feel seen, challenged your thinking, or broadened your understanding of sports culture, this is how we keep it that way. Independent, unfiltered, listener-powered. Subscribe to Immigrantly Uninterrupted and help us build this on our terms. Once you do, DM us on Instagram at SportlyPod so we can thank you.
The 2026 Chevy Equinox is more than an SUV. It's your Sunday tailgate and your parking lot snack bar. Your lucky jersey, your chairs, and your big cooler fit perfectly in your even bigger cargo space. And when it's go time, your 11.3-inch diagonal touchscreen's got the playbook, the playlist, and the tech to stay a step ahead. It's more than an SUV. It's your Equinox. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
You're listening to Sportly, an Immigrantly media production. What if baseball isn't just America's pastime, but something much deeper, something spiritual? That's the question at the heart of Baseball Beyond Belief, a new documentary that explores the surprising and often profound intersection of faith and the game we love.
Making it to the World Series means that one's hope and faith have been rewarded. Winning the World Series means that one's dreams have come true.
Structured in 9 innings instead of acts, the film takes viewers through these chapters covering everything from sacred spaces to the rituals, communities, and beliefs that players and fans carry with them to the ballpark. For sports fans, this might sound like an unusual angle, but think about it. The superstitions, the devotion, the heartbreak of being a lifelong fan of a team that keeps letting you down. Yeah, Mets fan, this one's for you. There's a reason people say that watching your team feels like a religion. This documentary leans all the way into that idea, and it does so in a way that draws on traditions across Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and beyond. Today, I'm sitting down with 2 of the people behind the film. Director John Scheinfeld is the one who brought this whole vision to life. He's made acclaimed documentaries on figures ranging from John Lennon and John Coltrane to Bob Hope. His films have played in theaters worldwide and on PBS, Netflix, Amazon Prime, ABC, and National Geographic. He's also joined today by Father Tom Gibbons, a Paulist priest and one of the voices featured in the film, who brings a frontline perspective on how faith actually lives and breathes inside the world of baseball. And full disclosure, I'm in the film. So whether you're a person of deep faith, a diehard fan, or just someone who's ever screamed at the TV and asked God why, this episode is for you. Hey everyone, it's Kavitha Davidson, and welcome back to Sportly. John and Father Tom, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, where are each of you joining me from?
I'm in Los Angeles, sunny Los Angeles.
As am I.
Fantastic. So no Dodgers fans among us.
No. Midwest boy, I will admit to being a long-suffering Cubs fan.
My parents grew up in Brooklyn, and when I moved to LA, I was like, am I going to start rooting for the Dodgers? And then I was just like, no, I can't do it. It's just so, no, I travel to a lot of different places, and I usually often pick up a team where I'm leaving, but I'm always loyal to the Yankees. That's the non-negotiable.
We love to hear it. We love to hear loyal to the Yankees in this household for sure. John, I'm super fascinated to talk to you in particular about this because this film is great, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in it, but but I think that it really captures a spirit of like why baseball is so meaningful to so many of us, right? But you are not particularly religious, and neither am I. And this film is about baseball and spirituality and religion and faith. So how did you come to, I guess, your like artistic approach to this, not being particularly religious?
Well, what was interesting, Kavitha, was I'd done a baseball film back in 2009 about Chicago and Chicago's love affair with the Cubs, not surprisingly. And I got to know the people at MLB, and we were sort of hoping we could find something else to do together. It took a long time, but one day they sent me this book called Baseball is a Road to God, and said a road to God, not the road to God, we must say, a difference, important difference there. And I read this book, and I absolutely was fascinated by it. Even though I'm not a religious person, I would say I'm a spiritual person, and those issues and subjects interest me. So I'm reading this book, and the way that he drew parallels and similarities between two subjects that you don't think have any connection whatsoever really fascinated me as a filmmaker, and I thought, I have to do this. I'd never seen another film that touched on these two subjects together in the same way, and just thought it had to be done.
And Father Tom, was it natural for you, being both a baseball fan and also a man of God, that this film would just fit?
Yeah, no, I mean, it really, the book, and then what John was able to do with the book, it really unpacked a lot of things that we often try to communicate in religion. So sometimes religion can feel like it's so far away and we do all these things. Why do you do these things? Because some saint in the 5th century said we should do these things, and it feels very disconnected from modern life.
Baseball being stuck in its traditions? What do you mean?
Well, not even baseball being, I mean, no, I mean, baseball is only 250 years old. Like I'm coming from a tradition that's 2,000 years old. The Jewish tradition's 4,000 years old. So, sometimes, how do we, but I think because of that time gives us time to appreciate rhythms. It gives us time to appreciate rhythms and slowing down and sacred spaces, and everything is not just so immediate. I have a little ADHD. I find I have to work to focus on a baseball game, particularly when it's April. September's a lot easier to focus on because everything's meaningful. But in April, you're like, okay, when can I go get a hot dog? Come on,
It's 89 degrees in New York in April right now for no reason. So
I
yes.
heard that. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So when I had an ice cream cone or a beer. And so it's it really kind of helps in this fast-paced society. I think baseball and religion help educate our brains to a different way of living, and I think that's one of the, many great things that the film and John Sexton's book tried to and do explain to us.
I'm glad that you name checked him, because John Sexton, former president and current president emeritus at NYU, who wrote the book Baseball is a Road to God, that really serves as a nice structural element for the film. When you read the book, John, what were your first thoughts that came to you? And also, I feel like John Sexton's passion for this subject really comes through both in the book and in the film, and just when you talk to the man about the game of baseball.
Well, he is an extraordinarily charismatic individual, really smart. He's not only a very passionate baseball fan, but he's also a wonderful teacher, a teacher both in the law school and in the School of Religion. And that passion does come across. But I'm not looking at that so much when I was reading the book for the first time. I have to think, well, is there a film here? Is the story interesting enough? Is the narrative multi-layered enough that it's worthy of being a film? And what's the approach? And as you happily noted, John had this structure in the book of this 9 innings. So instead of chapters, he had innings. And I thought, well, that's perfect. We have to keep that. The rest kind of became a bit of a foundation. But as a filmmaker, you have to be able to look at the written word and say, this is really great as a book, but is it cinematic? How will it play on a big screen? And what can we use in terms of making that transition, and what do we need to embellish? And so as a filmmaker, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is great. I can use this from John, but I have my own ideas. Again, not being a religious person, but being fascinated by what people believe and how those beliefs exhibit themselves in real life. And so all of this was kind of coming together as I was reading the book. And I just thought, yes, this is really fascinating. So we used a lot of John's material from the book, but also we reinvented some stuff including, to me, what interests me a lot about both sides, baseball and religion, is the humanity involved in it. And that's really a thread going all the way through the film, you being a very important part of that. You weren't just talking about baseball, you had your own personal story that you introduced into the narrative. And everybody that we talked to had the same situation where we saw what that connection between baseball and faith meant to them, and what baseball, and particularly how that transformed their lives. And then we have some standalone stories that also show the significance of baseball and how it really changed people's lives. And so I just, again, totally fascinated by that.
Father Tom, was there a particular moment in the film that reinforced for you the connection between faith and teaching and religion and spirituality and the game itself?
When I tell people about the film, I usually go back to sacred spaces because I feel like that's the part that's the most immediately resonant to people when I say, hey,
there is a feeling when you walk into Wrigley or Fenway or old Yankee Stadium, not new Yankee Stadium, but there is a feeling.
I'm there with you a little. I'm not against new Yankee Stadium, but people say it's the same stadium. It's like, it's not the same stadium.
The same stadium.
It's nice.
It's not.
It's very nice. The food's much better. But, I feel that way, even though I'm a Yankees fan, I actually feel that way when I go to Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I feel like they really nailed that. I spent a lot of years in Baltimore.
Camden and PNC in Pittsburgh, I think, are my two favorite ballparks in the country.
I have yet to go to PNC, and I've heard nothing but great things about that.
It's great.
Nothing but great things.
Team's not so good, but that's okay.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. But, and kind of communicating, we Catholics, we've got St. Peter's Square and St. Peter's Basilica. Muslims have Mecca, and, and Red Sox fans have Fenway Park, and when we explain it that way, people get it. They're like, oh, and I think it helps them go in. And because I am in Los Angeles, but I'm from the New Jersey, New York area, I think I always get choked up, seeing the Yankees during 9/11 and the Mets during 9/11, and how both those teams really helped rally the city together during a time of great trauma.
They brought the whole country together after that tragedy. Father Tom had similar experiences where we try to explain this film to people, and you say, it's about the elements of religion that are also present in baseball. And they're like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? But then we start to get into it, as Father Tom was saying. You have sacred spaces, so you have your church, your temple, your synagogue. You have sacred times of the year. You have Christmas and Easter and Hanukkah and Passover, and you also have opening day and World Series as sacred
April
times.
and October just feel different.
You bet. Absolutely right. You have miracles in both worlds. You have saints and sinners in both worlds. So as Father Tom and I start to explain this to people, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, we kind of get this. And again, that the power of film is also that you can take something that perhaps people hadn't thought about or known about, and you make it really understandable to them, and they can come out feeling, wow, that was really interesting. Great experience. And I think the other thing, Kavitha, that was really important to us while we were making the film is to do something that really was uplifting and hopeful and optimistic, because that's what baseball fans have about their teams.
It's
anyway.
A happy movie at the end of the day, for sure.
Yeah. And that was really important. I feel like I don't want people to leave the theater after seeing a film I've done and want to slit their wrists because it's so tragic and sad. I would rather have them come back out into the light and say, wow, we can do something exciting out here. And that's what one of our messages that we try to leave people with the film.
And I think it's that spirit why John purposely chose not to include many stories about the New York Mets or about the Pittsburgh Pirates, because he wanted people to come out. And although the Mets are gonna do well this year,
I think I have a line in the film that I didn't necessarily mean to be trash talking, but I think it's faith is being a Mets fan.
Mets fan.
Yeah, no. But here's the thing about Mets fans, though. They are rewarded. Every once in a while, they are rewarded. It's different than the Cubs. It was different from the Red Sox beforehand, and all that.
For sure.
But yeah, no, I actually root for the Mets if I'm not rooting for the Yankees. I'm always loyal to New York teams.
So one of the things that I think is really fascinating that I have told people when I've just talked to people in person about this film is that there was such an effort to be ecumenical, to include all of the faiths. Obviously, John Sexton is a Catholic, and obviously Father Tom, you're a Catholic priest, but not just to focus on one particular religion. How much effort was that? Obviously, it was a conscious decision. Was it difficult to do? And it also manifests in very subtle things that still you'll notice in the shots of, exteriors. And like you mentioned Mecca. So like how much effort went into that kind of equality of the faiths?
Well, it was very important. Again, not being a religious person, I didn't come to this with any particular agenda or any notion of focusing on one religion or another. Because frankly, it doesn't matter. All religions have very similar traditions and perspectives. Details are different, but some of the general structure is the same. So I felt this is a great way to bring a lot of people together, as I said, very broad general audience to watch this. And I think, Kavitha, we talked about this one time, but I very much look at a documentary like a jigsaw puzzle, where you open up the box, you dump out a whole bunch of pieces, and eventually you fit it together and it makes a very pretty picture. But jigsaw pieces only fit together one way. What we do as filmmakers, you can fit it together 10 ways, 20 ways, 100 ways, and it's how you fit those pieces together that make your film good, bad, or ugly. So a lot of effort went into how we fit these pieces together. So first we had to start with who are we going to interview? Who are our experts going to be that will offer their perspectives on both baseball and religion? So we had to do a real deep dive into people that could speak to both things and come from different perspectives. Whenever I'm approaching a film, I cast it much like you would cast a scripted feature. I want different voices, different perspectives, people who express themselves in different ways. And in this case, we had an extra layer where I had to have people expressing perspectives on each of the great religions in the world. And so we did. We have Buddhists, we have Hindus, we have Jews, we have Catholics, we have Christians, we have everything. And it just makes it so much more rich and interesting. So it took a lot of time to do that. And then because we have all these unusual voices speaking from their distinctive points of view, we had to find just the right shots to illustrate what they were saying. So we happily, we had full access to the Major League Baseball archive, but it took us a long time just to find just the perfect shots that would, as I say, bring to life what our experts were talking about.
Father Tom, in the course of making this film and promoting the film, have you met men of other faiths and just had priests and imam walk into a bar conversations about baseball?
Well, the people that I've talked to in the religious world, so to speak, they're all really excited about it because a lot of times what they'll say, like faith-based films have a really strong agenda. They're trying to ram a particular faith or a particular view down the point. And it's always been the kind of projects that Paul's Productions that we've always tried to make in our very long history is we try to create movies or participate in movies that advance the conversation between the sacred and the secular. So we love the fact that it's interfaith. Sometimes it's hard to explain something with something you're familiar with, but if you look at something analogous, you can help to understand it a little bit better. So, the priests and the sisters and everybody that I've talked to are just like so grateful and love this film and are really excited about it.
Kavitha, I think another thing I would add here is that sometimes when you hear religion, you think, oh, you're in for something very earnest and very serious and all of that. And
earnestness is not a bad thing, I will also say. But
earnest is fine, but I think what's also important is a sense of humor. And most of my films, I find great ways to work some humor in there. And this was also very important to us here as we're fitting those pieces together. There's a great moment from John Sexton where he's repeating a joke about what did Jesus say to Cubs fans? Don't do anything until I get back. And, it's maybe somebody would say that's a little blasphemous. I don't think so. I think God and Jesus both probably had senses of humor. And we try to reflect that in the film as well.
I think that absolutely comes across. Have either of you heard any kind of, again, with people not seeing the film, accusations of propaganda or pushing an agenda or anything like that, which, we've talked about a little bit here. And again, I think if you see the film, it doesn't back that narrative. But was that a concern at all?
That's a really interesting question. I guess the best way I can answer that is The book on which this film is based has a different title. I won't say who it was, but a very prominent sportscaster that I wanted to have in the film. I reached out and I said, you're in this other film of mine, and I know you're busy, but I really, really want you to do this. And he said, well, I think I understand what you're trying to accomplish here, but I really don't like the title. And it really kind of took me aback. I really hadn't thought about it, other than I thought it was kind of a provocative title. And he said, the problem is that for people who haven't seen the film, it may lend itself to being mocked because of a title like that. They haven't heard the smart things that people are going to say in the film. But also, we're living in a polarized nation at the moment where being too religious has a different connotation than it used to some time ago. And we might alienate some people. And the whole point of our film is to embrace all points of view, bring all kinds of people in the theater or the TV screen to see it, and not push people away. So we ended up coming up with the title that we do have, Baseball Beyond Belief, which I think is a great title and speaks to very much what we're talking about in the film. What I've seen, Father Tom may have a different experience, but what I've seen is sometimes they didn't quite understand what we were doing in the film, and a blogger here or there would say, well, I kind of like this, but, and then they would have some sort of criticism, which we're used to as filmmakers. But mostly I think they totally got what we were up to here, and I haven't really seen anyone. I mean, the best example is the Wall Street Journal gave us a fabulous review, and the writer just totally got it and had this very poetic kind of ending on the review that made us all feel terrific.
And kind of our experience, there is like a hurdle because of what other, I don't even want to say faith-based films, but films with faith in it, on some level, in some ways the well's been spoiled a little bit, or just because of prejudice against faith. We live in a hyper secular society that, sometimes you're just like, well, we just want to have a conversation. Like, when people walk through the door and then they walk out the door, then they're like, oh, we get it now. But it's one of those things where if you just hear it, they think, oh, I'm going to be, they think they're going to be sitting down to a lecture. Well, they kind of are, because John Sexton is giving a lecture literally, but that's not what we're talking about.
He's a very compelling lecturer, though.
He's a very compelling lecturer. Yes, it's so entertaining. No, but they think they're going to have somebody wagging their finger telling them how they should live. I think people are hungry for these kinds of conversations, but they don't always know how to have them. And I think films like this help them have the conversation in a way that just asks them to think and reflect. And I think that's what, the more of these kinds of films we can make, I think the more the knee-jerk bias against anything faith, and where we can introduce faith as being good partners. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to be like good faith partners in a conversation in which everybody's welcome to the table.
Could this film have been made about any other sport?
That is a great question. I'm going to answer it two ways. One is there is something so special and so unique about baseball that speaks to these issues in a way that is different from any other sport. But what I will say is we had a screening last year in Dubai. And so we're sitting there in a theater of 300 people. I would imagine most were Muslim, and none of whom grew up with baseball as part of their daily life. I was asking kind of the same question you just asked and saying, how are people going to respond to this film? And they were with us right from the beginning. They were totally engaged, and you could just feel it when you're in a room. And at the end, a number of people came up and said, we don't understand baseball because we've never grown up with it. But all the things you're talking about, sacred time, sacred places, miracles, et cetera, it's all part of soccer. So we totally understood the general principles you were talking about. So I think this is a film for anybody. I don't think that you have to be a baseball fan. I don't think you have to be a person of faith. I don't think you have to be a particular faith or a particular sport. I think anybody will kind of understand the issues that we're exploring in this film.
What's been both of your reactions that you've witnessed from going around promoting the film? Obviously, Cooperstown, Major League Baseball. You had a lovely screening at Village East at the Angelica in New York, and you've been touring the country a little bit as well. It's going to be on Fox Sports. It was on Fox Sports on Easter weekend as well. How has the reaction kind of galvanized around this film?
It's been really fantastic. I've gotten like tons of thank you notes from people who saw it on the Fox Sports rebroadcasts and met somebody in New York a couple days before the screening. And I was talking to her about it and I invited her to the Friday night screening. And then she came back the next day and brought some friends, because she works for Catholic Charities and she was really excited about it. I've just been I've had emails saying it just meets like at the perfect moment of where we are right now. I haven't gotten anything that everybody's just been kind of over the moon with it, which is really fantastic.
It's hard to say. The thing about a film is that it has a long life. If it's good, if it's a bad life, it'll be gone in a few weeks. Hopefully, this one will be the opposite. But we do get Facebook messages and we do get emails and we do hear from people. But I think the most rewarding for me is, we sit in a dark editing room for months at a time, working on fitting these pieces together, and you hope you're doing good work, but you don't really know until you're in a room full of strangers who are watching your work. So the night you were with us at the Village East, I'm sitting in my chair, and I'm getting really restless. I'm like moving around, and I'm getting nervous because I don't know how people are going to respond to this. We have a laugh that comes about a minute and a half into the film. And I've always thought that's the judge as to whether, are they with us? Are they getting us or are they not? And audience have been laughing at the right moment. And then the rest of the reactions continue. And so I was much more relaxed by the end of the film. But I think another thing that you can judge it by is Father Tom and I have both done together and separately Q&As after some of the screenings, and a number of podcasts like this. And the seriousness and the thoughtfulness and the smartness of the questions that we have been asked indicates to us just how much they have really absorbed and understood and appreciated what this film's all about.
Has this, as a career filmmaker, has the process of making this film and promoting this film been different from films that you've done in the past?
Absolutely. I mean, I have made some spiritual films. I made one about heaven and how the world's great religions view heaven and how people in those religions live their life to get there. I've done Noah and the Flood. I've done some other spiritual things. But mostly I do pop culture. So this one was extremely different. And I think in that way, very rewarding in a way some of the others aren't. When you're going to approach a famous musician, you do the cradle to grave, born in a log cabin and became a star and whatever. But this one was so much more challenging to put together in a way that would be understandable to everyone. And the fact that it's here and it's out and people are responding to it is extremely rewarding for me.
Yeah, you're also being extremely humble in just nodding to the films that you have done and the people that you have covered. So let's talk some baseball. First of all, have either of you seen the Chicago White Sox Pope hat giveaway, and how good is it?
Oh, I haven't seen the giveaway. I mean, that's been such a huge thing for the White Sox. Like, is Pope Leo, man. I haven't seen the White Sox Pope giveaway.
I might have to pull it up just to show you right now.
Please do, yeah.
It is literally a Pope hat with the sock, and it's fantastic. I'm sure that they had to have some kind of authority sign off on that, because otherwise it could be accusatory, but I feel like it's fantastic.
I'll have to ask some people, because I do know some people in the Vatican's communications office. I have seen the Chicago White Sox jersey that was made like with Pope Leo. I have seen that design, and that's great. So, I mean, they are leaning into it, which is really fantastic.
We would love, Kavitha, if we could get this to the Vatican and have Pope Leo watch our film. It brings together two of his big passions in life, so why not?
We are recording in the middle of April. We are 20 games into the season. We talked offline about how you can't read too much into 20 games of a 162 game season. But how are both of you feeling about the Yankees, the Cubs, about baseball? We also might be heading for a lockout at the end of this season. What does it feel like when the season is afoot, but we've got a long road ahead of us, for sure? I
would say to that, as Cubs fans have had to deal with for more than 100 years now, I have both faith and doubt. I have faith that they put together a great club with good hitters and great pitching, but I have doubt that it's going to show up every day.
And a fantastic part of the film, which I always say about my own spirituality and religion, is that doubt is necessary to reinforce faith. So,
yes.
And so we'll see where we are, but it's early, and I think I have faith that they will find their way.
And I think the Yankees are always going to be solid. They're always going to be good. I have to admit, a couple of the teams that after our beloved Yankees lost in the playoffs last year, I started following some other teams. I started picking up some other teams, and I was really impressed by Seattle. I thought they were just a really fun club to watch. So in addition to the Yankees, I also have my eye on some of those other teams like the Orioles and like the Mariners, just to see, I wonder what they're going to do this year, because I think that is what made the playoffs so much fun to watch last year, is that like how many of these games were really going to the end. And even the Blue Jays, the Blue Jays took that. I mean, that was a tight series.
The Blue Jays probably scare me the most in the division for the Yankees.
That's probably fair. Although I do have to say that living in LA, last year I got tapped to help celebrate Mass for the Dodgers. So I don't want to poo-poo the Dodgers too much, because then they want to invite me to celebrate Mass on Sundays. So
one of the fun things about making a film is that you are often surprised by what your interviewees will say to you. We do a deep dive and we look at other things they might have said or written. But every so often, there will be something very personal that comes up that you cannot have anticipated because perhaps they haven't shared it publicly before or whatever. And so when you and I were doing the interview, you told us a great story about a tattoo. I won't say anything more other than what you would want to be said about that. But it was totally unexpected.
I have a Yankees tattoo. Yes, I do. And I did tell you the origin story of that tattoo.
Yeah, she tells it in the film, and it's wonderful, and it speaks to her faith in her team and so many other issues about her personal life. And that's what makes this film so interesting, is we have so many different layers, and as I come back to what we were talking about before, the humanity of it all. But also it speaks to the faith and the passion one has for their team. And I think that's really important. And it's important at the beginning of the year where we're all starting equal. Everybody is 0-0, and we don't know how we're going to end up come September. And it just becomes really important, that passion.
Absolutely. Baseball means so much to me. It's the foundation of my life's work. It's obviously very personal as well, as I told you that story. Recently, I'm on the board of directors of the Yogi Berra Museum, and my mother passed away last year, and we dedicated a brick in her honor at the museum. We laid it in the ground in front of the entrance, which was a really lovely thing. My mother, the only member of my family who loved baseball as much as I did, and something that we shared. So there's something about this game, guys. Like, I don't know what it is, but there is just something about this game that it's humanity, it's community is a word that we throw around a lot in the journalism and storytelling world. But baseball is special, and I'm so glad that you guys have made this film to commemorate that.
Well, Kavitha, it's one of the interesting things, and we've all talked about this, is you can go to the ballpark, doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter what sex you are, doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter what your politics are. We are all united in our faith and passion for our team. And that's a really positive message. And don't we need that a lot these days?
I agree. I absolutely agree. Thank you both, John and Father Tom. This was a great discussion, and it's an important film. It's a fantastic film, and I hope that more people go out and see it. Thanks so much for tuning into Sportly. Tune in next week and every week after as we dive into another great story. And if you enjoyed this episode, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, or come tell us on Instagram. You'll find us at SportlyPod. Sportly is an Immigrantly Media production. This episode was produced by Paroma Chakravarti. Our executive producer is Sadia Khan. Our sound designer and editor is Paroma Chakravarti. Our theme music was created by Simon Hutchinson. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune back in next week and every week after for more Sportly.